This episode is brought to you by Tulsa Pack Athletics. With the largest following on Instagram of any female dog trainer in history, Jerri Sheriff, aka Sailor Jerri the Dog Trainer, is making huge waves in the industry with her international business, Tulsa Pack Athletics. After nearly 20 years in veterinary medicine, Jerri founded Tulsa Pack in 2020. It immediately became a global success, bringing something revolutionary to the dog training world. She is a certified dog trainer that has been featured in the Washington Post and several other publications around the world. She is also a cowgirl and a mother of 3. Her work in the industry is widely recognized by top professionals as creative and community-driven. With multiple trainers, an entire apprenticeship school, and an ever-growing social media presence, Sailor Jerri is someone to... Jerri offers free and low-cost courses, making training affordable and accessible, along with teaching people about connection and community at the forefront of her mission. She also infuses principles of recovery into her work, as she is a recovered alcoholic and addict. Her community is a safe space for everyone to come in and learn. Welcome to Straight Up Dog Talk, the podcast where pet parents, pet guardians, and pet professionals come together to dive into real issues in dog parenting. From controversial training methods to sensitive health topics, we're getting raw and real about what it means to care for our canine companions. Join us every Wednesday for unfiltered conversations, expert insights, and personal stories that will make you laugh, cry, and grow as a pet parent. No topic is off limits and no question goes unanswered. You won't get one perspective here. You'll get them all, because every dog is different and every human is too. You can follow along on Instagram, TikTok, and Facebook at Straight Up Dog Talk, or by visiting www.straightupdogtalk.com. Tune in from any of your favorite podcast platforms. Welcome to Straight Up Dog Talk. I'm Em, and we are here for our 1-year anniversary show. I cannot believe that it has been a year of producing podcast episodes and all of the other things that have happened in this last year. And so I have a very special guest, someone that is a very good friend of mine who is here to celebrate 1 year with us. And not just because she is a friend, but because she is also a mentor, a teacher, and a dog trainer to me. So welcome, Jerri, Sailor Jerri, the dog trainer, to Straight Up Dog Talk.
Thank you for having me. It sounds like I'm all up in your business.
You are all up in my business.
I was like, wow, what do we do next? Start a band? We should start a band.
I mean, we have 2 podcasts that we kind of work back and forth on behind the scenes on, and we have mutual friendship with Madison, and got Tulsa Pack, we've got Straight Up Dog Training, we've got all the things. So it's been kind of a wild year, and I have felt so lucky to have gained you as a friend, and I have been so blessed to learn so much from you this year. And I kind of just wanted to talk about that today. And I wanted to hear your perspective of how the last year working with me has been, and kind of just share with the audience how crazy one simple connection can turn into this full-blown behind-the-scenes operation and all the touch points we have.
Well, I'm excited to talk about that. I am a notoriously private person. I know that it doesn't seem like that, but I mean it when I say that I prefer to be alone or maybe with one other person, and I generally am always doing something with animals. So if that other person isn't down, I keep to myself a lot. The reason I say that is because there is a value in social media that is often overlooked because of all the bullshit on social media and the human riffraffing, as they would say. But I try to not focus on that because it will take you under. It will take you under as a viewer, as a content creator, as a business owner, as a person that's just trying to find maybe your people. If we, which we tend to do, focus on the negatives, it will appear to be this life-sucking harpy from which there's no escape. When my experience, I tell people all the time, whatever their complaint is, just the average person I would come across, whatever their complaint is about social media, I don't want to fucking hear it. You have no idea what you're talking about. You would crumble under one day. I know that there are negatives to it. more than the average person would know because I do it partially for a living. But what I also know about it is that the relationships that I have in my life with people that I've never physically met, but that I spend a lot of time getting to know who they are, that cannot be understated. I don't think that it's just me. I think it's just a representation of what can happen. I've watched people get sober because of their relationship with me. I've watched people leave the house, which they've never left before. I have shoveled, I'd say 6 to 7 tons of my inappropriate, oversized ego out the door because of social media. And I've also been able to create a model for how to engage with it in a healthy way for my kids and for my family and for my friends. And it's not going anywhere. And doing this thing where we pretend it can't do all of these things for us and it's just evil, to me is remiss. So you are one of the examples of someone that I didn't know from anyone. And now I have all these touch points, in multiple different places, and we know a lot about each other's lives. And it doesn't really, I love in-person community. I just spent all weekend with barrel racing people on one day and a bunch of old men that run gun dogs the next day. And that was the best day. Yes, just in the clubhouse with the fellas. And we were talking dogs, and it was wonderful. But my relationships that are through social media, those are also wonderful. And they've also done incredible things for my life. Let me change gears here for a second to get to what you asked me. Whenever I come across someone, I'm starting to see what I think people that have long-term recovery, who help others in recovery, I'm starting to see what they see. And what it is it's not you. It's not like, oh, these are Jerri's great original ideas and she's the only one that's ever thought these things and only through her can we achieve these. It's not that. It's something way different than that. If I really tell who I am, if I really say all the things with no guilt and no shame, it lays this foundation for people to finally let it go, at least in your presence. At least in my presence, I'm sure that my friends are always being themselves. And I can tell when they're being weird about something. And I will have to say, that you can just say what you want to say to me. Nothing bad's going to happen. Even if I get mad, that's not something bad happening. I'm not going to not be friends with you. I've had to tell Madison that on a couple occasions. Like, Madison, you need to speak plainly to me, because she will be diplomatic. And I know that underneath that, she really wants to be like, that was rude, or that hurt my feelings. I'm like, you need to just say what it is. And I've noticed that the more that I do that, I also do it. It has developed my friends and I a great deal. And then that becomes contagious. So my point in all that and saying that is, when I started working with you, I thought very differently about you than I do now. I would say that it took me a while to get to know you because I wasn't sure what you wanted. I wasn't quite sure. And you probably remember that I had this like moment with you where I was like, what's the deal? Are you worried about what people are going to think? And we had this long, deep conversation about it. And after that, I never felt that from you again. I felt like you were just like, well, I guess whatever happens, happens. In the beginning, I could sense that you were trying to find your place and you knew that you had one and you were, come hell or high water, you were going to find that place in that space. And I'm like that too. And it can be off-putting to people, because it can come off as that you're wanting something or you've got an angle, when really it's just eagerness, it's excitement, it's passion. And so I actually learned that from working with you. And I really hadn't learned how to have the language to tell someone, like, pump your brakes or wait, focus in on this. I didn't have the language to say it nicely because I cared about you. It's not that I just go around saying mean shit to people that I don't care about. I don't mean to make it sound like that, but it bothered me to not learn how to say it to you. And so Madison and I talked about it for months, about how do we best help Emily? how do we keep her here? Because you're like a missile. You know what I mean?
Yes,
Wherever
I am.
you point it, it's going to fire and blow that thing up. And so you have to be really careful with stuff like that. And I recognize that in you because that's in me. And so it's a really cool way to refine something in my own character.
I love that. I didn't know that, obviously.
I know, I was
I
saving
think
it to
that's
tell you.
amazing.
I was saving it to tell you right
I
now.
love that. But I am also a notoriously private person. I spend a lot of time by myself. I don't really spend a lot of time with other people. I have friends that I go and do things with, but most of the time it's just me hanging out with the dogs and working on whatever it is that I'm working on. And I also get very deep into what I'm doing, just like you said. And I, at one point this year, had Madison tell me, you are not allowed to take any more classes this year. You are going to take a break for the rest of the year because you have taken as much apprenticeships and continuing education as someone would normally take in 5 years.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you took a lot more than I did. You got to let that stuff marinate for a while. What I think is really cool is as you go on, you'll notice that that will be cyclical generally. If you're doing it right, this is my firm belief that our life should replicate the seasons and cycles that are natural in the world. And I can't get enough. I can't get enough. I can't get enough. I'm going to listen to every single episode of Denise's podcast, like obsessively, or I'll binge particular class, like a set of webinars or something, like over and over, or I'll go to 10 different things and then I won't do anything for 6 months because I can feel that I've saturated what I'm really going to process and retain versus what was entertaining me because I like this topic. I love the topic of animals. It's my favorite topic. And it's important for us to accept that we will have those times and then we'll have times where we rest and then we will have times where we apply. You know, you let all that stuff sit in and then you start to apply it and then you have that reflection period. When you've been applying it for a certain amount of time, you're able to look back on the process in retrospect and actually have some appropriate perspective. And when you're in some of those earlier phases, you can't look back and see anything other than this far in front of your face. I've enjoyed watching you. I always enjoy watching people start something because I know how hard it is to keep it going. And I'm always rooting for them. I'm always hoping that someone will prove me wrong and that someone will just blow it out of the water because it's so fun to watch when that happens.
It's hard. Like social media is hard. And when I came into this space, it had been after years of a recovery of a different type, recovering from a surgery, a massive brain surgery where it decompressed my whole skull from a herniated brainstem. And they don't tell you when you recover from something like that, it's going to be mental, emotional turmoil. They do not prepare you for that. They prepare you for the physical. You're going to have to go through physical therapy. You're going to have to learn how to walk again. You might have to learn how to write again. There are things that are different about me now that I know, like my handwriting. If you look at my handwriting from before my surgery and now, it looks completely different. You would not know that the same person had written those things. So there were definitely some things that changed in me physically, mentally, and emotionally, but it took me a long time because I heard for so many years, you can't, you can't, you can't, you can't. And then on top of that, don't talk about it. Nobody wants to hear that.
Nobody wants to hear your sad story about what you're struggling with. Whoever started that, I want to get in a time machine. I want to wring their little neck. I'll talk about it. Why don't you leave the room if you don't want to hear me talk about it?
Yeah, nobody actually wants to know that you're not feeling well. And so when you're struggling with something like that, whether it's recovering from drugs or alcohol or a massive life-changing surgery, you're going through that trauma. And it's kind of like if you don't speak it, it just stays in your system and you can't let it go because you're not expressing yourself. And I think you were one of the first people that really pushed me to just be like, no, put it out there. You said with this podcast and your dog training, you were going to go out there, you're going to show people everything that you went through. You were going to be honest about your disability. You're going to be honest about your struggle and your daily pain and all that stuff. And then you were going to step into the space and be like, I have been through all of this hard stuff. And here I am still showing up and look at where it got me. And I'm still building. I'm still doing that. I know it's going to take years. It takes years to do that stuff. But I do have that attention and that level of focus that I know that, okay, we'll just do it a little bit at a time. I think the first week of our apprenticeship program, you said in one of our videos, I don't want cookie cutter Jerry's. And that was like the final moment for me when I was like, this is where I'm supposed to be. Because you and I, again, we were both vet techs. We've both worked with animals our entire lives. We've both worked with horses, you to a greater extent with horses than me, but all the things, we have so many things that are so similar. And I know that you understand this because being a vet tech takes a certain type of personality. Not anybody can just roll up into the clinic and be a vet tech. It's just not how it works. So that was another sign for me too, that you were the right person to start with, because I knew that you would have the kind of integrity and work ethic that I did because of that job.
Yeah.
And that made it easy for me to go, okay, just slow your roll and listen to Jerri. And your program was hard for me. It was so hard for me because I don't want to be in front of the camera. That's why the podcast doesn't have video, because I don't want my face to be plastered all over everything. And I have finally just gotten comfortable enough to start releasing some long form content on YouTube and putting my face on Instagram a little bit more, because apparently that's what people want. And I'm like, this is not what I want, but I will do it for you guys because that's what you want. Starting with you, it all started because of Unpacked kind of coming underneath the label of Straight Up Dog Talk, and Madison and I doing that and learning about your podcast and kind of tying together that way. And then it was your apprenticeship program was about to start again, literally right after that. I signed up immediately and we did the thing. And that was 3 months where I was stressed. You would be like, you have 48 hours to turn in this video. And I'd be like, no, wait, what? 48 hours? Because I don't think that I'm a creative person. Like really? I can outline something and I can set it up and whatever, but I'm not just one of those people that like off the flip just can come up with something and it turns out great. That's not how
you're not an improver, are you?
No,
I
wish I could be.
It's okay. We need both kinds. We have to have both kinds, because if it's just people like me out there, nothing is ever going to get done. Yeah, we'll be entertained, but there'll be no structure. So it's good to have people that are close around you that are the opposite of what you are. You know, it's nice when it's in common, but that's Madison and I work really well together for that reason, because she's so structured and she's so disciplined. I'm just disciplined in a different way. I'm disciplined in my character. And I'm not saying that she's not, but because she's definitely has the best integrity of probably anyone I've ever known. Maybe my dad.
She and I are kind of the same when it comes to that. Well, your dad is a totally different story. I mean, your dad, the little bit that I know about your dad and how many times he came and got you, how many times he pulled you out of a bad situation, how many times he was there for you. I mean, that says a lot about him as a person, because I know plenty of families who just leave people to their own devices after a while. They stop trying to save them. They give up on them because they don't think that things will change. And your dad never did that, which is so awesome and so incredible, because I think that that's what happens is a lot of people get stuck because they don't feel like they have somebody that has that unconditional connection to them.
Well, and we're taught in mainstream culture not to enable addicts, and people don't know the difference between enabling and still always being there for someone without enabling. And for whatever reason, my dad was just good at it, but he did enable me. I remember one specific time, I'll never be able to get that out of my head, that he was like, no, I enable you. And then he got up and walked out. And it was just, there was something really profoundly horrific going on. And he knew that he couldn't do anything to stop it. And the only thing he could do was try to keep a roof over my head, at least try to keep me off the streets. And so that's what he did. And he knew that it was the lesser of two evils. But I'll never forget that. I don't think I've ever told him that, but I'll never forget him saying that. And I was probably really wasted at the time. I'm surprised I even remember. But yeah, he's quite the guy. He's quite the little mister.
Well, his catfish, he's definitely a fisherman. And,
he's got a fan club on social media.
in common, which I don't know if a lot of people know this, but we both live in the Midwest.
Mm-hmm.
You live in Kansas and I live in Iowa. We're
Yeah.
really not that far apart.
We're
I
not that
really
far.
probably should just like come visit you.
Come,
I
yeah,
want
you
to
can
come hang out with the gun dogs.
come and stand in the wind with us is what you'll be getting. Yesterday I was in Dexter, and it's just a very, very small town in southeast Kansas. And little Sue ran her very first trial ever. And my boyfriend did his first English pointer trial ever. So he's done other trials, but he doesn't really like to trial. He just likes to actually go and hunt. So it's cool to see men do a lot of stuff that we don't think that they do. And they do actually talk to each other. And they do actually make friendships. And they do get nervous when they don't know what's going on. And they do, just like us, ask questions and look awkward as fuck and are just weird all around. But they do try, and they are nice to us a lot of the times. I don't know. Something about yesterday, I was like, wow, we're really mean to these dudes. And they're just like dudes, just trying to find something to do. I can't imagine living in a world full of really brilliant women. Well, half of them probably toxic, and trying to navigate that. I don't know what you said that reminded me of that, but I'm going to throw it out there to the listeners that I'm really grateful to be a woman today.
It's so funny because I think that I've learned a lot this year about how differently men and women approach things.
Dog training will teach it to you very quickly.
Yeah. And I mean, one of the first people that I worked with was a couple. And I remember I'm giving them the lessons and we're going through things and we're talking about things and very straightforward. And here's the video that I created from Jerri's program that teaches you how to hand feed. And the wife is bang on, bang on, bang on, bang on. And husband is off in la la land, like not doing anything that was in the video, not connecting with the situation. And so I'm over here like you, very nicely trying to figure out how to tell him, hey, we got to all do it the same way. We got to get with the program. Otherwise, nobody's going to learn anything. And then finally, I tapped into a part of me that this is going to probably surprise a lot of you. I'm not a girl's girl. I've never been a girl's girl. I've not ever really had a ton of friends that were girls until very recently. Most of my friends, most of my long time friends, my oldest friendship, I think it's like 30 years long now, is a guy. All of my best friends are guys.
Yeah.
So I just tapped into my bro speak and I talked to this woman's husband. And guess what? Every single time after that, for all of the time that we worked together, he was bang on too. And it was just, he was like, what did you do? How did you do that? I need to speak to my husband like that.
You're like, well, you gotta hang out with the dudes to know.
You gotta hang out with the dudes. And that's how I was. I think my parents probably always thought it was weird, but my best friend, Tyler, he lives in Boston. We've been friends since we were 15 and we still, we talk a couple times a month. I go out there and visit him. He used to come over to our house every single day. We never dated. We never anything. And he basically lived at our house. I'm going to tell this story because it's relevant and funny. He became so much a part of our family that he would just come hang out at our house, even when no one was there. He had a key. So one day my dad came home from work and he goes upstairs to get changed and cook dinner or whatever it was that he was going to do. And he finds Tyler asleep in their bed, my parents' bed. And he's like, what are you doing? And he was like, well, I thought that you would kill me if you found me in Emily or Molly's bed. So I just decided to sleep here. And my dad said, that is what the couch is for.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. Well, I had friends like that in high school too. I had two of them that I was really close with that were guy friends that we didn't date or anything like that. We were just really close, and I'm still friends with them to this day, so I get it. I think the difference between men and women when training dogs, sometimes raising children, is as vast and wide as many of the other differences. But I think that men generally represent kind of the outer world. It can be callous. It can not care. It can be distracted and looking at something else and not looking at you. The reality in life can be really harsh. And I think that men sometimes represent that within the family system. and women represent the inner world, like your family and your, which you will find much more nurturing and loving. So I recognize that that's a dynamic for couples to have. That being said, I have also recognized a dynamic of women raising men. So the man is just essentially another child for them. He does make money, but they're both working, and a lot of times those guys will either be completely absent, you just don't see them, or you see them in the background watching TV or playing video games, or you hear them commenting, making little side petty comments.
So you basically just described my ex-husband, who divorced me because he didn't want to take care of me after my brain surgery.
Right. So that's a dynamic as well. And those guys are generally paired with women that are incredibly capable. And so they just learn how to take care of yet another person. I don't see that dynamic very often in my clientele anymore because of the way that I curate my message. I think that people know that when they come to me, stuff's going to get called out. And if they're not ready to maybe hear about some of those topics, I think they shy away from coming to me at all. And I think that if they figure out after they hired me that I'm exactly like this all the time, and they're afraid I'm going to dig really deep, they're just very, very short in training. They only send their training videos. They don't want to have conversation about anything else. They just want to see if what I said was true. They're waiting for it to not work so they can be like, see, because they're butthurt about something that I said. This is just all, I'm not being shitty. I'm just, these are things that we do as human beings. I have done that. I'm sure you have done that at some point in your life. We've all done those things. So what I found over time was the more I curated my message to be representative of what it's like to sit across from me or to talk to me or to work with me, then people would not have to guess and they would know. And then if they were ready for that or it resonated with them. I mean, not everybody wants to go into boot camp. I'm using that as a term for probably what it's like to work with me. I think you have to really be ready to inquire and examine of yourself and your life and your choices. And I could see how that would be maybe not what somebody's wanting to do when they train their dog.
But you're like that with us as students too. I have been your student, I have been your client, I have been your friend. And I have done business with you. So I've worked with you in kind of like all of the touch points, and you're very consistent and you're very direct and you are very honest and yet positive about it. So let's talk a little bit about that because we worked with Fitz for a whole month. We worked with him.
He's such a cool dog.
He's such a maniac. I don't think that people understand what a maniac he is, but he's smart. And you saw that.
Yeah.
And I think that was the time that I laughed the hardest was when we had decided, okay, Fitz is herding Emily down the stairs. We can't have Fitz herding Emily down the stairs because it's dangerous. So we did all of these things and we made so much progress. And then he would find a way to get around it and do something that was leading him back to herding me down the stairs. And so at this point, we have decided, okay, we're going to pick up as many of the toys that are reachable, that are not like way out into the yard. And we're going to put them up out of his way so he can't get them.
Mm-hmm.
And this is going to help us reset and things are going to go back to he's doing the things that he's supposed to be doing and catching the food and going down the stairs without pushing me with his nose. And that very next day, I sent you a video and Fitz had jumped up on the table where all of the toys were to get his ball and then proceeded to herd me down the stairs. And you said, Fitz gets a box. Fitz gets up with a lid. And I don't think I had ever laughed so hard because it was finally like somebody else saw the crazy that he is. He is such a maniac. And he's just like, let's like, do this my way.
What you're saying now. Yeah. He's
you
got a lot of
said
energy.
that you would never, that's why you didn't get certain types of breeds of dogs.
Mm-hmm.
Fitz was a perfect example of why you didn't get certain breeds.
Yeah, I like a real mellow dog. I want a dog that's always up for adventure, but he's laying like a vegetable over there. But I like a dog that's a little more mellow in the house. Or the trainability for excitability. It's a better way to say that is it's easier to manage his arousal in the house. And I've had dogs that were a little bit more excitable, but personally, none ever like Fitz. I've trained a lot of dogs like Fitz, but I've never personally had one like him.
I think that I have this like on and off like light that I turn on occasionally, and I'm like, send me the hardest dog you can possibly send me, and I will work with it, because I get these really special dogs. You know, I had Fiona, who was damaged because of Izzy, who had to be behaviorally euthanized because she almost killed Fiona more than one time. And what I was doing years ago, what people are now learning that they have to do, is the crate and rotate and the management systems, because I had a dog that was literally eyes going completely black and attacking the other dog for no reason at all. And eventually Izzy did have to be put down, and that was a really terrible situation.
Yeah.
Fiona ended up having to be put down because she attacked another dog, because after that had happened to her, it was actually my parents' dogs, which I've kind of touched on this a little bit in the podcast before. When I moved back to Iowa, I brought Cajun and Fiona with me, and I needed to live with them for like a month before the house that I had rented was ready. And I said to my mom, you cannot let your little dogs, your little 20-pound dogs, outside with my 120-pound reactive dog who is terrified of other dogs barking and lunging at her, because something bad will happen. It was fine for the first week. It was fine for the second week. And on the third week, Mom said, it'll be fine. And 2 dogs died the next day.
Oh my God.
It was one of the most awful experiences in my entire life. It was really awful.
Yeah. I think that there's an extra wound there when you know for a fact that those things were preventable. Makes it a lot harder to digest that happened. There's a lot of, I told you, why did you do that? But then also recognizing that our parents grew up in a very different time, and dogs were different. There were not that many of them. There certainly weren't people getting pit bulls and putting them in their houses. It was just different, and they had less rules, I think, in structure and management, but they also let dogs be dogs a little bit more in some ways. Yeah, it's just tragic. I can't tell you how many times I've heard that somebody said, don't do the thing, and then they're like, oh, it's fine, and then dog or multiple dogs lose their life.
Yeah. Well, when a 120-pound dog goes up against a 20-pound dachshund, the result, unfortunately, 2 deaths, because you have to put one down, and then the other one basically just, he didn't make it because of it. So that was pretty awful. And definitely one of those moments in my life where I was being told, you can't. I had just gone through moving back from Texas to Iowa. I had been told, you can't be a vet tech. You're never going to work with animals again. Now you're going through this divorce. You're starting your whole life over. You're like 32 years old. And now this dog that you haven't been able to see for 6 months, because I came to Iowa for a second opinion on some of my medical stuff and to stay with my family for a couple of months. And that's when my ex-husband served me divorce papers, was while I was here doing that. And so then I was stuck here until he allowed me to come back and get my things and my dogs. So I was away from them for like 6 months. And then I was finally able to go get them and bring them back with me. And then two and a half weeks later, I had to put one of them down. So it was really a rough thing to go through. And that's why I tell people, I'm starting later on these things. Like the podcast came later, the training has come later, all of these things have come later. It has taken me so long to heal from all of this trauma wave that just kept hitting. Every time it was like I came up for air, something else just knocked me right back under the waves again. And so I think that that's where I see a lot of your journey in me, is because you would start to come back and then you would get pushed back under. And then you'd start to come back and then you would get pushed back under. And we also seem to both have a pretty bad, terrible past pattern of relationships.
I did, but I have since fixed that. It only took me 42 years.
Well, I have been single for, by the time this episode comes out, almost 3 years. And I did that for me because I wanted to build the podcast. I wanted to build the dog training. I wanted to focus on me and figure out what those things were so that I stopped attracting, like social media, stopped attracting the wrong people, right?
That's right.
It's just been such a huge change in me looking at things. And Toby was too, because Toby, he was a rescue dog. He'd been used as a bait dog, and he was completely feral when I got him and mean. He bit my mom. He bit my sister. He bit my boyfriend. He hated everyone. And now he's like this little lumpy potato man.
Cute little potato man. Yeah.
Change and growth do happen, but it does take time. And I think that by sharing our stories and telling people, hey, we went through 10 years of bullshit. And this is what's come out of it. And we're trying to build bigger and better and do bigger and better and help other people so that maybe it's not 10 years for them. During COVID, I was in a relationship that was abusive. And we also had a hurricane in Iowa. We had a land hurricane in Iowa. I'm not kidding. They call it a derecho. It did $7 billion worth of damage and took down 78% of our tree coverage.
Oh my God.
And I was unable to leave the situation that I was in because there was literally nowhere for me to go because apartment buildings, homes, people were displaced as it was. And then me needing to get out of a bad situation couldn't get out because other people couldn't even get out of their situations. There were people living in parking lots in tents because they had no home anymore. It was insane. It was absolutely insane. I am so grateful for the last couple of years, especially the last year, because it has taught me so much about what happens when you find the upswing, when you are in the upswing, and how good you can make your life be just by expanding your knowledge and participating with new people. And I think that it shows a lot about you and how closely you watch and how quickly you identify things, because you say that some people can't take it, but I love it. I love it when you're like, nope, that's bullshit. Don't do that like that.
Yeah. It's definitely off-putting to a lot of people, but I think part of that is people are just listening to me monologue a lot. Once they get an actual conversation with me or they watch me in conversation with someone, I think that, and I hope anyway, that they develop a more appropriate opinion of me. Just because I cuss when I tell stories doesn't mean that I'm flagrantly cussing to every client. I'm a normal person just like everyone else. I have normal conversation just like everyone else. And I would like to think that I'm a pretty good communicator because I work so hard on it. I work hard at being effective. You know, not always getting people to think what I think or changing people's minds, or that's not really ever my goal. My goal is just to be an effective communicator because I know that the ideas that I'm communicating to people will help them because they've helped other people. So I could assume that they, just like everyone else, could benefit from this information as long as I can say it in a way they can receive it. And that's hard. It's hard. Just today on Instagram, somebody was asking me a question about something a dog trainer was doing that they hired. And I answered in a general way. And then I said, I am not comfortable with you coming to me to ask me questions about another dog trainer when you're not working with me. You can just hire me if you want to know what I would do. Well, what would you do about this? And what would you do about this? All of the things that you just mentioned are management. Those are not training things. Your dog's chasing your cats around the house all the time. Put the fucking cats up. Give them a break. Make some boundaries and some rules about what's going on here. Because if your dog isn't listening when you say stop, leave the cat alone, that tells me that that's probably not something that you've built in or worked on. And now you need somebody to come and train your dog. That's not a dog problem. Well, what about counter surfing? What would your methods be for counter surfing? It's called extinction. That's not a training problem. That is a you issue, and you guys are leaving food out on the house with an untrained dog in the house. That's common sense. So what that tells me is when this keeps happening, that there is no common sense in dog training. And the reason there is no common sense in dog training is because there's no common sense in households. In general, if you walk into the average American household, there will be kids running and screaming. And my house sometimes is one of them. There'll be things that really there have been time to take care of, but we were doing other things instead. There'll be ineffective communication. There'll probably be passive aggressiveness, sarcasm, other toxic behaviors going on because people aren't really taught a lot of stuff. We're certainly not taught how to be effective, honest communicators within a relational style. We're not taught that. People are that grew up in dysfunctional families, of course, are playing an all or nothing game, and generally will be very codependent or very narcissistic in their dealings with people. And so I think that's the issue, is that these dogs are living in houses of people that are absolutely willing to blame every single thing on the dogs and the kids and never themselves. And that's just human nature. It's human nature that we do that. We don't like to see where we have taken part in any of this and how it could be partially our fault or because of us. And so we look for all these answers. This is why people go to 5, 6, 7 different trainers. If somebody tells me they've been to that many trainers, my first question to them is, what is the disconnect for you? So 6 different people have shared information with you. Were they all wrong? Were some of them right? Is it possible that you're just not doing what they said? Is it consistency? Tell me more about that. Because the only common denominator here is you and that dog. And that dog has the brain of an 8-year-old. So we got to get real honest about who's really responsible here. And it's never, ever, ever the dog. I hope everyone, if you hear nothing else I said today, it's never the dog. That doesn't mean that we just need to be like, it's always your fault, Stacy. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying to use the cop-out that my dog is spiteful or stubborn or I've done it and she just won't do it. Liar.
Mm-hmm.
Liar.
100%.
That's not what's happening. And it's the easiest once you say that and you let it go and you're like, okay, I recognize that if this dog lived in your house, Jerri, it would not be doing what it's doing with me. So I accept that I don't know what the fuck I'm doing. And I'm just going to let it go. And it means nothing about my character or who I am as a person. It just means I don't know this information, but I'm willing to learn. That, if people would adopt that attitude, dog training would actually be relatively easy for them. You guys were throwing food. We're throwing food on the ground. We're throwing a piece of food in the air. We can backpedal. We have a leash and we have some toys. The overcomplication of dog training is hilarious to me. I'm not talking about sport training, so let's move that out of the conversation.
Yeah, bird training for sure, or service dog training.
Yeah, we're talking about pet companion dogs.
Yep.
Pet companion dogs. I heard a guy say one time, he was showing the consult process, and he was talking to this probably 50-ish, 55-year-old woman about her dog, and he said, well, now I've got to figure out something about the dog being biddable. And I was like, first of all, that's irrelevant to literally anything and everything you could ever be talking about in a companion dog. And I know that other dog trainers are going to hear this and think that I don't know what I'm talking about, blah, 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 blah. I've been working with dogs for 25 years. I did not just get here the day that you saw me on social media. This has been my whole life, my entire life. I've been in vet med. I've been in training. I've been in the Humane Society. I've been in the shelters. This has been my entire life. Just for anybody that's listening that doesn't know that about me. And when I hear dog trainers as an industry, as a group, overcomplicating every motherfucking thing that you can about dog training. Oh, let's go to the next class about this. Let's go to the next class about this. And oh, now we're going to start this. And now there's this technique. And now there's this technique. And now you do it this way. No, you do it this way. Now you do use this tool. Now you use that tool. It makes you wonder a little bit, how have we been making this all happen before we all appeared here? Like, how have we been making it all happen? We were talking about this the other day about e-collars and gun dogs, and they were all talking about their GPS trackers, because people will get like, oh, what are all those? Why do you have 2 e-collars on that dog? And why do you, they're not. One of them is a very sophisticated GPS tracker. It's big, it's thick, but we were laughing because they were talking about their e-collars. And I made some joke about, I bet my grandpa would think that's funny. They didn't have freaking e-collars back then, yet somehow making it work. I'm not an over-the-top anti-e-collar person. I just don't use them, but I really don't care if other people use them. I'm so sick of arguing about it, talking about it, fighting about it. I think it's the dumbest, most basic conversation that's ever happened, ever. And it will have no resolution because nobody wants to move their position because everybody thinks that they're right. So I just don't care. But I think about that. I think about what were they doing before? How are they training for? What were the choices that they were making? My dad has been force-free liberty training horses since he was a little boy. And I guarantee you, he's never read a fucking scientific journal in his life. And the science-y people have come in and taken this beautiful art form, this beautiful thing that's available to every person, regardless of how they interact with their dog. They may need that dog. That dog may need them. That may be all they have. And then when we boil the conversation down to what methods are you using, I immediately know that I'm at a level of development that person's not. If you want to argue about the use of pain and fear and whatever in dog training, you are saying something obvious. And I'm not here to talk about obvious things. Well, if it's so obvious, then why are other people doing it? Why don't you worry about yourself?
Yep.
Why don't you worry about yourself? Because unless you have an actual plan to eradicate e-collars and aversive tools that will not have more negative effects than having them, you're just smearing your feelings all over the walls like shit for all of us to smell it. And I will not tolerate that in my presence. I will have productive conversations with people that are driven behind what's best for the community overall, what's best for the whole, rather than Kinsey that feels that she needs to make a point about why she doesn't need to use pain and fear. And thank you. That's great. Sit down. I've just had enough. I've had enough. And I've been in this years and years now, and never have I ever been as annoyed as at the balanced community ever. I've been annoyed at some of the practices in balance training, like the overuse of board and trains and the crank out shops, the crank out e-collar board and train places. I've been very, very firm about that, and I will continue to be. But by and large, I think that the force-free community is an unfortunate stain on the dog training industry, and I find that to be sad. I think that's sad because I want to see more compassionate methods too, and I can guarantee you I'm in circles where I have plenty of opportunity to walk up and start, you shouldn't be training your dog. You shouldn't be did you know? And the circles that I run in, that is not appropriate.
No,
you're gonna get nowhere because you're around a group of really tough people that really love what they do. And if you want to make that point, you can lead by example and wait until somebody asks you questions and opens the door. But to come and stick your finger, whether it's online or in person, you are showing that you are at a stage of development that needs a bit of improving. You're showing. I mean, it's just the way it is. And well, I don't care. I'm going to keep doing this as long as pain and fear exist inside dog training. Well, I think that's stupid, but do you? Because I know how people change, and that is not it. And so whatever, you can always come over here in my group if you want to drop that bullshit and you want to actually come and be effective with getting your compassionate methods out and learning to be a proper communicator. I encourage people to come and be in our community. I don't care if they called me a bitch. I don't care if they said something nasty about, I don't care. It doesn't matter. All's forgiven. Come over here, hang out. But there's no love lost at all between me and the force-free community. I'm really disappointed after what I saw this year. I'm sorry that I drug the conversation into this.
No, that's okay. I think that it's a huge thing, because it really has been just kind of like an all-out war. But before I go into my thoughts on that whole situation, I want to say that I think that one of the common sense problems that we have with people in dog training is that people think that dog training is like this magic program, and we come and we insert it and download it and upload it, and now the dog is programmed and it's going to do exactly what we said it was going to do from this point forward because I did this magic spell on it. And that's not what it is. It's time, it's practice, it's energy, it's repetitive, and it never ever stops. It's all the time. Because guess what? We've had beautiful summer months. We've played outside and it's been wonderful.
Yeah.
And it started cooling down and we haven't been able to play as much. And guess who tried to start herding me down the stairs again? Because he has too much energy. So what do? We pivot, we adjust, we change things.
Yes.
Yeah. And people have to understand that that is part of the whole thing. And when you start to bring in the balance and the force-free and all of that kind of stuff and the extremes that we've faced this year in that argument, you have to understand that this is, again, where we talk about the dog in front of us,
Mm-hmm.
the person in front of us, the culture in front of us. You and I both know that farm dog life is a totally separate culture than home pet dog life. And people who have farm dogs are not opposed to using e-collars or shock collars
Letting
or
their
having them
dogs
on a
ride on the
prong.
back of flatbed trucks.
Yeah, or letting them sleep in the barn. They don't have a bed. They sleep in the hay that the horses eat. It's a totally different level of relationship with a dog. And if people could just respect each other's decisions in life, we would be so much farther ahead in so many things. But we get picky when it comes to things like religion, politics, apparently dog training, the way that people live, the type of lifestyle, or who they choose as a partner.
Mm-hmm.
Why are we so worried about what everybody else is doing when we have our own little circle of things that we need to be focusing on? That's what I don't understand.
It's another stage of development. I was stuck in it for a very long time and everyone watched. I was like, cool, let's grow up publicly on Instagram. First, let's do it in AA, and then let's take this to the street. And that's exactly what I did. It's very easy to want to make a point. I saw a person the other day get on Instagram, a dog trainer, and say that it had been, a certain number of years they'd been doing this, and as far as the social media part, and they had had enough, and they were going to take a break.
I know who you're talking about. I saw that post too.
Yeah, I didn't watch the whole thing, but I got, kind of the gist of it. And I thought, yeah, I can understand how it gets overwhelming and confusing. And for us as trainers, for people as clients, it's very convoluted. So what I want to offer is the same thing I've been saying over and over and over and over. Find somebody that you like as a person. Today when that person asked me all those questions, I felt myself getting offended. Okay, where is that coming from, Jerri? They're just asking how to deal with these certain things. I think it was coming from a place of feeling like, why would you ask me how I would deal with that? You should know me enough to know that whatever way I choose to deal with that is going to be compassionate, well thought out. It's not going to just be whatever. And so that was the root of it, was, okay, if the average person is asking me, there must be a lot of them that don't know then. So the feeling I was feeling was, no, I have erred in my messaging. There's a reason why that particular person that caused so much controversy this year is so popular, because he's the most basic bitch that ever lived.
Blanket statements.
Blanket, boring, bland, blanket, boring, bland, vanilla, bland. And I mean bland in the sense of vanilla. If we don't start taking a note from that and simplifying what we're saying and talking to the average person and really breaking it down in our content that we're sharing, that person is going to continue to have market share. And regular folks will continue to see the most ridiculous, obnoxious pseudo training, just like with Caesar. That's what the representation will be. And we've seen how much that has affected our culture. How much has Caesar Milan affected our culture? Some ways positively, right? Because dog training became mainstream because of Caesar. So we can say that's a positive. I think Caesar loves dogs. Regardless of whether I agree with what he thinks about them, it's very obvious that he has a love and a passion to share and teach about animals. That's a positive. But his ideologies are very much more based on cult-like stuff. Like, to me, the Caesar crew are the Scientologists of dog training. And over in the other group of the person who shall not be named, the extremists in the force-free world, those people are like purity culture to me. It's like, for the purposes of conversation, it's very European. It's very, listen, we have decided that this is what's best for everyone, and we will implement this rule right now, and you will follow, or you will be fined, or you will be this, or you will be this, and you are not welcome in our very homogenous society. And then trying to apply that to a place like America, which has never been seen before in the history of the world. There's never been what it is now, anyway. We know that there were obviously people here tens of thousands of years ago, long before any Europeans or Westerners or Africans were here. I mean, what it is now and how diverse and how many people, how many cultures it represents has never been seen before. And somehow in dog training, the upper echelon has come down off their cloud of academia and is pulling pulling everything from European standard and from scientific journal. And that soul and that heart and that every man's sport, every woman's sport has been obliterated by, I'm finding it, well, whatever you think I might say there, I'm probably thinking that.
I feel like part of the problem though is that people don't have that connection and that relationship with their dogs like you and I do, right? For a lot of America, a dog is a box on a checklist.
Correct.
White fence, house, picket fence, like all of the things where these are the things that we do to look the way that we need to look in society so that we're presentable and acceptable and people will like us. We have 2.5 children because we got one in the oven and we got a dog and we got a fence and we got a big house. And we've got 3 vehicles. We have our lake house for the weekends. Honestly, that's not even a legitimate or even attainable American dream for most people anymore nowadays, but yet that's still the standard. And we've lost all of the connection and feeling and love and romance and all the good stuff because we've tried to categorize everything and put it in its neat little boxes and say, okay, I finished that checklist. Now let's move on. And then the whole bond and relationship just gets thrown in the trash because nobody ever thinks about the secondary part of that relationship. Yeah. Now we have counter surf.
Well, not if you're lucky. Counter surf is if you're lucky. Not only do we not have the relationship, we have an epidemic in this country specifically. We have an epidemic of people rescuing dogs out of guilt, rescuing dogs out of that's the saddest story. And then you're not prepared for what a normal dog, let's say normal dog, would bring to the table. I had a lady contact me today. She's like, hey, I've got this 10-week-old pit bull puppy that's blind, and I wondered if you had any training tips. I asked some questions there. Why is it okay for me to say, can you tell me more about why, as a 25-year-old young woman, you adopted a blind dog? Can you tell me a little bit about that decision? What's your schedule like? What's your life like? What's your support system like? What are your finances like? I'm not saying everybody needs to be rich to have a dog. I really don't think that you do. I think if you get a dog and all you can feed it is Old Roy and that's how much money you have, I think that that's fine. And you're doing a good job by keeping it fed and it appreciates that. So I don't think it's that. What are some of the underlying issues? I can't get people to talk to me about this because the white women get real offended. My friends will talk to me about it, but as a larger group, I can't really start the conversation that I want to around what's the deal with the rescue thing. What's the deal? And it's hard to talk about this because then people are like, so you're saying you shouldn't rescue dogs? Well, no, that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying something weird's going on.
I feel like people use the rescue as
a personality.
It's an identity.
As an identity.
I mean, think about, I told you, we just said this earlier in this episode, Toby's a rescue. How many times do I talk about Toby being a rescue?
I don't even think I knew that he was a rescue dog. I had no idea.
Occasionally, I'll bring it up for some kind of random post or something, because I believe that the rescue, that happened 11 years ago. We've been together 11 years.
Yeah.
That's like this much of his story. Yeah. It's like the teeniest, tiniest portion. Did he have to be rehabilitated? Yeah. Will I talk about that? Yeah. Was he used as a bait dog? And did he have a broken jaw and a broken hip when I got him? And they told me he'd probably lose all of his teeth? Yeah. Will I talk about that? Yeah. But that's because I want to educate people on how you deal with the aftermath of those situations. Yeah. But I am also, you met Fitz, a very hard-headed person who is going to, as you said, put my missile and fire it in a direction that it's going to go. Because I will take on the hard task. I will put the work into it and I will dedicate myself to it. I don't think a lot of people know what they're getting into when they put themselves in those situations. And now they have an even bigger problem and an even bigger mess that they don't know how to deal with because they thought that everything would just be fine and they did the right thing. Not saying that they didn't do the right thing by adopting the dog and rescuing the dog. I just don't think that, again, this is another area. Do your research. Learn about the breed.
Yeah. I mean, I posted something about this the other day and people were like, I can't believe that you would talk about purebreds. I can't believe that you would suggest 5 purebreds that are good for families. There's tons of purebreds in the shelter. I was like, okay, it's the hardest conversation. It's the hardest conversation for me inside of anything that ever has to do with dogs, this topic is the hardest for me because I am an adopted person. And if my mother behaved in the way that some of y'all out there behave about your rescue, oh, hey, this is Jerri. She's adopted. To every single motherfucker we saw, my God, the horror. I would feel like she was using me as a prop for her conversation, like she was virtue signaling off of me. I cannot imagine. I mean, my parents are white. It's obvious I'm adopted, but I cannot imagine if that was the central point in which my parents viewed me from, and they spoke about me in that way to the world. It would be really hurtful to me.
Yeah. And I think that that is an excellent comparison.
Let me just say also, it would also be incredibly hurtful to me if my father went around telling everybody how great the breeding stock was and how expensive my mother is. So you people out there that are talking about your $4,000 dogs, you're embarrassing yourself because no one really cares. No one actually really cares. Maybe if you're in a sport and you're talking about pedigree for that reason or confirmation or something like that that's specific, I totally get that. But just the discussing how much we paid for our dogs and how much we pay for their food and their rescue, and it's all just virtue signaling. And it's okay because we've all done it. I do it. You do it. We all have virtue signaled, said things that were inappropriate. It's talking about it so that we can at least bring it into the conversation. Are we doing this? Oh my God, if I am, I need to know. I need to know. But it's hard to be called out in some of these things. It really is. It's hard for me. There are things that I have to be told on a weekly basis by some of my mentors and people that I work closely with that that's not going to fly, or that doesn't look good, or that's not a good idea, or that was rude, or maybe you shouldn't say that. And it's helped me. It's helped me let it roll off my back. I listen, and I listen to what they're saying, but I don't take it so personal because I recognize what happens when you don't have people that challenge your character around you. And you will develop this little echo chamber like what we see in dog training, where everybody gets together in a little circle and talks about the same ideas over and over. We see it in politics. We see it in religion. How many times do we need to see something failing and not being productive before we're like, why don't we try something different? And so that's what I'm trying to do in the dog world, is offer a completely and totally different perspective and also a delivery method of training that hasn't previously been offered, to my knowledge, anywhere. So we can start to see ourselves clearly and accept that I make mistakes, I do dumb stuff, I say dumb stuff, I make a fool out of myself, I'm awkward, I'm all these things, but I'm also trying really hard, and I'm fun, and I'm funny, and I'm passionate, and I have lots of love in my heart, and blah, 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 blah. And when you can put all those things together, instead of just virtue signaling the things you want people to see about you, that's when you can really build a community and make some change.
Yeah, and I think that that's what you're doing. And I'm definitely trying to follow your example. Yeah, I'm always texting you that I'm a weird, awkward person and I have a question but you are one of the very few people in my life who will shoot it straight. I have established a friendship with Denise Fenzi as well. And I can also message her and say, hey, and she'll say, well, or she'll say, no, that's good.
That
or,
sounded just like.
I love her for that. But I love her for that because, it helps me. And like you said, it helps you develop your character, but it also helps you become a stronger, more well thought out, more well-spoken person because you're actually thinking about what you're saying. And I think that it doesn't matter. I think sometimes we do need to stir the pot. Because if we don't stir the pot, we're not going to make change. Like this whole rescue conversation. I feel like we have set so many standards by society that everybody is now confused what the actual standards are. And again, they just try to get into their little box or their little line and they stick to that. And like you said, use it as an identity. And then now we have mixed messages and crossed wires and miscommunication and people are hurt and people are not understanding and dogs are suffering and people are suffering. And we have this whole just tragedy of events happening. And unless we start saying, hey, maybe we don't agree on this, but what can we do to change this? How can we work towards a better understanding? I think that there really are people who are in the same area as you and I and Madison and Denise and how many other people can we name that are in this circle of people where we're all like, look, maybe we're not considered force free because we won't say you can't use e-collars, but maybe we're not balanced because we don't use them. But what are we worried about? We're worried about our heart and mind, and we're worried about the dog's heart and mind. And that is what is important.
I mean, that is the whole reason behind the open-minded approach. That's the whole reason, is that the obvious things are already implied. We're going to do our very best. We're going to be as compassionate as possible and thoughtful as possible and keep our emotions in check. Obvious and implied. And then beyond that, it's everyone is welcome. It doesn't matter what you're doing. Because if you're here and you're listening, I have a much better chance of pulling you towards this end than I did ever before. And you may never want to change. It's not for me to decide. Every person is the master of their own ship. And when people try to be little pirates and jump on other people's ships and start, that is not the way that it works. You jump on my ship, I'm going to stab you. I'm going to, with one of those pirate swords.
We need a version of Alice that's a pirate now.
I know, maybe the horse, I'll pretend it's a rocking boat tonight.
There you go.
We talked about so many things. I just was like, let's talk about this now without announcing the topic, and just started yelling.
Do me a favor, though. Plug your business. Tell everybody where to find you and leave everyone with a final message.
Yeah, I would love that. So you can always find me at TulsaPackAthletics.com. Please follow me on YouTube, where you'll find long form content. Follow me on Instagram, where you can probably talk to me the most. I'm the most accessible on Instagram. And of course on TikTok as well. So all the platforms are Sailor Jerri the Dog Trainer. My website's TulsaPackAthletics.com. And there's a little video that will direct you when you get to that website on how some of the stuff that I have might be helpful to you. I have trained dogs all over the world for 5 years now. I probably carry about 15 clients at a time individually, which is only due to the delivery method that I have. I wouldn't be able to do that, if I saw dogs in person. I haven't touched a dog to train them in years now. And they're all miraculously getting trained by their mom. All of them. Some of them have moms and dads, but mostly it's mama. And I just teach them what I know. And I'm a really good teacher. And I can teach over a lot of different kinds of modalities. And I work really hard on that. So if you need help and you feel like you're in crisis, or your dog is struggling with reactivity or separation anxiety, your basic behavioral problems, I'm the gal for you if you're ready to come and learn and work. And if I could leave everybody thinking about one thing today, that your dog is a complex, beautiful, majestic creature. They're not robots. You can't download a software program and have it work like that. But what you can download is yourself and your consistency in your intention. And the best piece of advice I have is to just go outside with your dog every day. Go spend time with your dog outside every day and see how just that little bit changes your life.
Well, thank you so much for being here. And thank you for being so much a big part of my support system and my trajectory for
you're welcome.
Podcast and the training. And I can't wait to have you come back, and I will talk to you soon. And I will see you guys next week on Straight Up Dog Talk. Straight Up Dog Talk was created by Emily Breslin. It is edited and produced under the supervision of Straight Up Dog Talk LLC and Emily Breslin. If you're enjoying this podcast, follow or subscribe and be sure you don't miss an episode. And leave us a review on your favorite podcast platform. Looking for more honest and relatable dog content? Check out our sister show, Unpacked, with Jerri Sheriff and Madison Simpson. Thanks for listening to Straight Up Dog Talk. See you next week.